Welcome back to Pop Goes the 60s. I'm Matt Williamson and I have an update for you on the recent video I did on the argument with context. It's the Beatles Let It Be argument between Paul and George. And I wanted to update you a little bit here because it came to my attention that I may have got one of the transcriptions wrong. It kind of changes the meaning of this so-called argument. So there's a part in the film, or in the clips that we saw, that George Harrison, it seems like he says to Paul, he calls him Paulina. And I've had about 5 people comment that that's not what George was saying to Paul, but it's a slurred version of "but you know." So somebody from Liverpool actually said, hey, that's George's thick accent, it's very slurred. So if you replace Paulina with "but you know," it gives it a completely different context, or it sounds less derogatory. So let's have another listen to that.
Work my part out, if you like.
No.
Paulina, it's like that. It's like a matter of working it out with you while you're working your bit out.
Now, I listened to that section many times. I couldn't quite figure out what he was saying. It didn't seem to be in context for him to call Paul Paulina, but that's as good as I could get. So, I mean, that's one of the problems with transcribing this. Sometimes they're not speaking into the microphones, that are off mic a bit. There might be music playing in the background. Somebody's fiddling on a guitar. There's all kinds of ambient noise going on. So some of this is completely inaudible, unfortunately. There was one other instance where I might have made a mistake that was brought to my attention. It's again with George. He says to Paul, a section here where he says, "I don't even care." That's what I had written. But a few people said it only occurs. That George said it only occurs when, and then he continues, he gets cut off by Paul. So let's listen to that.
It's funny that how it only occurs when we put
I know it's this one. It's like, should we play guitar all through age?
One other question people had, I had about 4 questions or maybe 5 that asked for what it meant when the Beatles said, "Do you want me to continue to vamp?" So when they're playing their music and they're trying to get the song together, in the musical sense, vamp is a short introductory musical passage, and it's repeated several times, so it's almost like they're creating this musical placeholder temporarily that's there while they get the song figured out. So when they say, "Do you want me to vamp?" that's what that means. Now there was one other section in here that I think needed some clarification, because there was quite a few people who brought this up. And this is the area where George Harrison suggests they do Maxwell's Silver Hammer. And I had about 7 or 8 people say that, oh, George is being passive aggressive, because everybody knows the Beatles hated that song. George and John hated that song, and Ringo. But really, let me give some context to this. That's probably not the case, because this was Monday on the 6th. The first time the Beatles ran through Maxwell's Silver Hammer was the prior rehearsal on Friday. The prior Friday. They went through that song 2 times. Once was 33 seconds, once was 37 seconds. So that's probably not why George said that. I think he was in earnest saying, hey, let's do another one of your songs. Because as we know, that song got played to death during Abbey Road, which happened 6 months after this. So I'm pretty confident by saying that wasn't George being passive aggressive, though I don't know. How long does it take to hate Maxwell Silver Hammer?
Let's do another song.
No, come on, we just learn to learn this. Do you want to do Maxwell's Silver Hammer?
Another issue that could probably use a little more clarification, I think, is there were several people who suggested that, hey, John is sitting back during this whole thing, not saying anything because he doesn't care. He's tuned out and he's bored. And the old tired narrative, while John is just completely checked out. That's not true, I don't think, because we'll see in some upcoming videos that he's not completely checked out, and he does put a lot of work into certain parts of this project. But in this case, I was reminded of Mark Lewison's work, where he has brought this up in several interviews about John, or several podcasts that he did discussing his book all these years. And typically, John would stay out of other people's arguments. He would sit back and let them hash it out and let them settle it, and he would not interfere. And that's a trait of his that comes through the whole Beatle history, really. And Lewison does point that out. So I think that's what's going on here. In the end, John does somewhat side with Paul when he suggests that the Beatles should, whoever is has written the song, that's the person who should run the rehearsal. So that's about as far as he gets on that. And finally, we have a lot of people chiming in on how they love what Ringo has to offer in this whole entire conversation, which is nothing. And I just like to remind everybody that Ringo supports everybody equally with his silence. Well, that does it for my quick update today on the argument with context. I really want to thank you again for all the comments you've made so far. I think that the reason I started this channel was to have a dialogue with people who have interests in these topics, and it takes a lot of people's input to get to the truth of the matter and some of this stuff. So again, I appreciate all the input. So I've got more Let It Be videos on the Beatles coming. We're going to break down some more areas. So stay tuned, click that notification bell so you know when I have another video coming. And as always, thanks again for watching Pop Goes the 60s.
Let it be, let it be. For goodness sake, let it be.